in this book, they came before Columbus. This is just an example about the relics or the artifacts that they have pictures of them. You can look at them and see these statues and figures of black Africans that came to the Americas long, hundreds and hundreds of years before Columbus. See, and you can tell that they're Africans because black Africans have, many of them have distinguishable features. Okay? I'm going to read something to you that account Constantine Delvoni said. Okay, this guy was a historian, an Orientalist, a scholar, philosopher. In 1787, he visited Egypt, and he said, all the Egyptians have a bloated face, puffed up eyes, flat nose, thick lips. In a word, the true face of the mulatto. I was tempted to attribute it to the climate. But when I visited the Sphinx, its appearance gave me the key to the riddle. On seeing that head, typically Negro in all its features, I remember the remarkable passage where Herodotus says, as for me, I judge the Colchians to be a colony of the Egyptians, because like them, they are black with woolly hair. In other words, the ancient Egyptians were true Africans. Okay? They were Africans. He looked at the Sphinx and realized this. But if you look at the Sphinx today, you don't see this. Okay? You can't really tell because the nose is gone. Okay? Let's read something John L. Stoddard said in one of his lectures. He was a famous lecturer of the late 1890s, an historian. I want to read this to you. He says in one of his lectures, he says, it is the antiquity of the Sphinx which thrills us as we look upon it, for in itself it has no charms. The desert's waves has risen to its breast, as if it wrapped the monster in a winding sheet of gold. The face and head have been mutilated by Muslim fanatics. So he says and attributes its wear of the nose to Muslim fanatics who are trying, he says, who he implies are trying to hide the truth, because we know that Arabs ruled Egypt, okay, but that was not always so, because black Africans, the ancient Egyptians were black Africans and they ruled Egypt. If you go into Egypt, you can still see some of these people, their ancestors, okay, but Arabs rule Egypt now, okay, and it is again amazing that, again, much of what we have and what we know about religion and science, it all came from Africa. Okay, Egypt is in Africa. If you think about it logically, Egypt is in Africa. Okay, it says, the mouth, the beauty of whose lips were once admired, is now expressionless, yet grand in its loneliness, veiled in the mystery of unnamed ages, the relic of Egyptian antiquity, stands solemn and silent in the presence of the awful desert, symbol of eternity. Here it disputes with time the empire of the past, forever gazing on and on into a future which will still be distant when we, like all who have preceded us and looked upon its face, have lived our little lives and disappeared. Okay? I want to read something else to you. By this Vivant Denon, okay? A French artist who sketched the Great Sphinx of Giza before its defacement, okay, started again attributed to Muslim fanatics. This is what Denon said. Though its proportions are colossal, the outline is pure and graceful. The expression of their head is mild, gracious, and tranquil. The character is African. I'm going to start that again. Though its proportions are colossal, the outline is pure and graceful, the expression of their head is mild, gracious, and tranquil. The character is African. But the mouth and lips of which are thick has a softness and delicacy of execution truly admirable. It seems real life and flesh. Art must have been a high pitch when this monument was executed. So again, we read that this Sphinx, now he saw it before it was defaced. He said the character is African. Again, many black Africans have distinguishable features, okay, in the cheeks and in the noses, okay? It's unquestionable, it's undeniable. Okay, and there are many other references, historical references, historians, scholars, even the ancient writers, as Diop mentioned, that state that the ancient Egyptians were black. Okay? But that's a truth that has been hidden. But it is truth. And truth comes to the light. I want to read scripture. And we just scratched the surface on that. I encourage you to do your own research. Okay? But here we go to the scripture because Israel's color, and I'm only dealing with color right now. I'll deal with curses at a later date so we can further identify who Israel is. We find Egyptians mistaken, or Israelites mistaken for Egyptians. This is Genesis 42:6. This is Joseph. Now, if you know the story of Joseph, Joseph was one of the 12 sons of Jacob. And his brothers sold him into slavery. And he went into Egypt. And he was a slave, and he eventually rose to prominence. Okay, and he was second command only to Pharaoh. And it was a famine in the land, and here his brothers, they come to Egypt, and they come for food. Genesis 42:6. And Joseph was the governor over the land. And he it was that sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their faces to the earth. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan, to buy food. Verse 8 reads, And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. Now, brothers and sisters, if Joseph was white in color, if Joseph even looked even Arab, or if the Egyptians looked Arab, look, they both look the same. The Egyptians and the Israelites. Okay, because if he was white, wouldn't he stick out like a sore thumb among the Egyptians? Wouldn't they surely know their own brother? The reason they didn't know their own brothers, one is because, it says in another place he spoke to them with an interpreter, but also because he more than likely had on Egyptian garb, and the biggest characteristic that distinguished him as an Egyptian, which made them not know who he was, their own brother, after many years, was that he looked like the Egyptians. He looked like another black man amongst black men and women, other black men and women. But he is of another nation. It's like an Irishman amongst a bunch of Germans, or a bunch of Britons. Okay, unless he says something, you won't know. But they'll look alike even though they're not the same people. Just like blacks are not all the same people. All blacks are not the same. Okay? That's just even with this term. I'm going to deal with that more in another lesson. But even African American. How are you going to be named after a continent? Okay? All Africans are not the same. You got named after a continent with over 50 countries in it. How are you going to take that as your name? But I'll deal with that later. But again, here we see an Israelite mistaken for an Egyptian. Let's go to Exodus. The book of Exodus, the 2nd chapter, and verse 11. Because Israel eventually moved into Egypt, and they multiplied, and pharaohs came and went, and the pharaoh rose that didn't know Joseph. And he was threatened by how Israel had multiplied, and said that, hey, if there's ever a war, these Israelites are going to rise up against us and take the side of our enemy. Let us oppress them. So Israel was put under hard bondage. Okay? See, slavery for Israel is nothing new. You got slavery in America. You got slavery even all the way back in Egypt. We've been slaves from Babylon to Birmingham. There's nothing new. But the Lord's going to deliver us from it. But here, when it was time for the Lord to deliver his people, he chose this one Moses. But let's read about this Moses before he was chosen as the deliverer, or before he was delivering his people. Because he grew up in the house of an Egyptian, under Pharaoh's daughter. Now again, if he was white, there's no way he would have been accepted. Okay?